to the Horror Hour.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Get you. Here's Johnny.
All right, hello and welcome to the Horror Hour, a place we discuss, we debate, we disagree on all things horror. I'm one of the hosts here, Yutaka. Hello. And today I'm really excited because I've got two folks joining me. I've got Emily Bennett and Justin Brooks, whose recent film just hit Shudder, Alone with You. So first off, thanks both for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
So why don't you give me a brief synopsis of the film?
You want to take it?
No, you're good at this.
It always makes me do this. Alone with You is a broken love story about a girl named Charlie waiting at home on the night of her anniversary with her true love, Simone. And as the night starts to go on, she starts to understand that she might not be alone and the doors won't open, and Charlie might be dealing with something far more sinister than just a locked door.
Yeah. And and so you both wrote this and directed this. And I guess my first question then would be is how is it directing in that space? Because I think it was just you all also doing the filming, correct?
Yeah, so we're letting our cat in because she's just been screaming.
Oh, you're fine.
So directing in that space, so we were the entire crew of Alone with You. I'm not being facetious about that. For about 3 or 4 days of a 2-month filming schedule, we had Justin's father come down from upstate. He cooked us dinner. He held a green screen. Yeah. Otherwise, the entire crew, you're looking at them. You're talking.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had no gaffer grip, genie, no sound, no nothing. The only crew we had was in post. So we would just wake up in the morning, black out all the windows, because we tried to keep kind of daylight shooting hours, even though we were shooting
of
a
course.
film that mostly takes place at night. And we would be in our pajamas and we would literally hang lights from the ceiling. The ceiling kind of looked like Swiss cheese after a while. I would help him just set things up, move C-stands. We had a ton of equipment. And then eventually I had to be like, okay, I have to go get in hair and makeup, go put on my hair and makeup, and started the shoot day. And I was our AD, so I always had like the shooting schedule of what we were going to do too. So, and Justin obviously shot the entire thing.
That is just wow.
True indie filmmaking at its finest.
It was rough. Not something we want to do again. But,
yeah, no, that's insane. And you guys, well, you turned out such a great product though.
Thank you.
So that's got to be rewarding. And I mean, it would hit festivals. It's now been picked up on Shudder, and I've seen some of the reviews. I loved it. But it's great to see people are finally also experiencing it. And I'd like to know, what's that like? Just seeing what I'd say is positive reception.
It's been really fun watching the multiple lives of the film, I think. I mean, when you're in it and when you're building something, it's so hard to see the next step. You know, you don't know where this is going. You don't know. You're just in it. Your head is in the creative, you know. But then, you know, our first big kind of moment, of course, was the premiere at Fantastic Fest. And then the kind of run of festivals that we did, which was so cool and so fun to see the in-person reception. You know, being able to see your film on the big screen is just like nothing else. And then of course we sold it both North American and international around Fantastic Fest.
Before the premiere.
Premiere. And then seeing people pick it up on VOD and whatnot. When it was released in February, there was another kind of like rush of interest and people talking about it. And now finding its final home on Shudder, which we are just thrilled about because we're both horror fans as well. So of course we love Shudder. It's been awesome because I think that's where it's supposed to be. Those are the people that are supposed to be watching this movie. We made it for the people that would have a Shudder account. You know, we couldn't be happier with the reception there. It seems like people are really getting it and understanding the film that we made. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, we were actually supposed to be going into production with a bigger film with our producers that are on Alone with You, Andrew Corkin and Theo James, who are wonderful. And I was not meant to be in that film. We hope to still make that film, but lockdown happened and we still had our producers attached, and we were like, well, what if we did something entirely different
Necessity is the mother of invention.
So we literally came up with this idea based on a short film that Justin had written. We outlined the script in a month, got notes from our producers, we wrote the script in another month, and then just started shooting. And we were fully funded for a small film, but we were, we didn't have crew, but we had time, so we made use of that time.
That's impressive. I mean, and that's also very interesting too, because, speaking with filmmakers and, obviously dealing with COVID, it's changed a lot of either how they were going to approach a project or completely have to change a project they were in the middle of. So that's very fascinating that it kind of created, it changed us creatively to bring what we see. I mean, that's also, whoever shot or edited your trailers, I saw that. I just, I think I saw someone make a post on Twitter and I saw a trailer. I was like, oh yeah, that film's for me. I need to watch it. And so I had to rent that, and I was just like, I writing that story, does that come from anything that was personal, or because it felt personal, or at least that there were things I could relate to?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's it.
Painfully personal for both of us,
for sure. I think we wrote and filmed it right in the dead center of like the height of quarantine in Brooklyn at the time. And I think it's interesting. We saw so many people like really lean into the pandemic of it all and the quarantine, and all of a sudden we were seeing a lot of stories around that, and we really wanted something very different because we wanted to divorce ourselves from the outside world as much as we could, just because it was a horror show on its own. But I think what we found interesting when we were writing is really what the quarantine and what all that did to us all kind of mentally and psychologically, and how we all dealt with that kind of isolation. And I think it's for us, it was more a story about who are you when you're divorced of the things you do, the people you spend time with, the identifiers we all have in our day-to-day life, right? Like when you're truly alone, when you're truly left to your own devices, like who is that person, and that's something we really wanted to explore. And in doing that, I feel bad for Charlie because she's just this bucket of our insecurities that we've just been filling, and it's like, it truly is. It's a very close film to both of us. The characters are very much little bits and pieces of us sewn together, for sure.
Yeah, and the surreality of quarantine and being alone, literally just having the doors literally locked on all of us. I don't know about you, but I started being like, is my mom real? Is my do you know what I mean? Like weird, like existential thoughts that you're just like, well, you're being crazy. Stop being crazy.
It's like the time didn't exist during quarantine.
Time didn't exist, like in Alone with You. And so we wanted to take those feelings that I think we were all feeling, but put it into a more into a film that could be a bit more evergreen. And you know, hopefully you can watch this film in 10 years and it would still resonate, because the story isn't about quarantine, but it does capture the hopes and fears and existential angst that I think we were both going through. So yeah, poor Charlie.
I mean, my hope is to see this film divorce itself from quarantine and the pandemic altogether. I want people to be able to watch this film outside of the world that we went through at that time, because I do believe that while it was a touch of a reaction of a moment and like inspired by, that's not the story we told. We did not tell us a pandemic story. And I think this really lives in the world of small psychological horror that I hope people can watch down the road without thinking of the pandemic, but rather think more inward with it.
Honestly, when I watched it, I didn't think of the pandemic. I'll tell you.
Okay.
The mental health notes, and then obviously you perfectly said, like, when you are alone with yourself for any period of time, and it could also be people who could also be in the throes of, you know, a state like a manic state, or just something like the world around you changes and you don't know what's real. And I found this very fascinating to watch play out through the course of the film. And before I get to the elements that really freaked me out, I have to ask, what was it like playing Charlie? Because I mean, one, I think you did a great job, but it was just you. So how is that as an actor, to, you know, not have scene partners and to just try and, like, how are you reacting, or, you know, interacting, I should say?
Reacting and interacting is exactly what I was doing, even if there was no one actually in front of me to react to. So you put it perfectly. Basically, as an actor, I've been a theater actor for my whole life and then transitioned into film and TV. You rely on your scene partners to really help define you and ground you, and the relationships therein. And in a film like Alone with You, it is all about the relationships that Charlie has with her mother, with her best friend Thea, especially with Simone. These relationships truly define her. And so I couldn't go into this being like, I'm the star of the movie. I had to go into it saying, I am Charlie with all of these relationships around me constantly. Like, I am constantly latching onto Thea to be my, like, just fuck it, just go to the bar. Like, he was my friend who, like, pulls me out of my shell. And, you know, my mom is someone I don't talk to very much, but oh my God, she's calling me. And so what is that in me? And my love for Simone truly was the most defining thing, because the music and the flowers and the romance, the past that we've had, but we're going to get through it. And so I had to really latch on and basically convince and gaslight myself.
Oh, wow.
As an actor, to be like, I'm surrounded by all of these people in this process, because that's what Charlie believes as well. And so I had to just really convince myself, you're not alone in this. And then to slowly have that sink in. So yeah, it was very cathartic, and I do love Charlie. She was rough on me, but I love her at the same time.
I also would like to know, you know, shooting some of the sequences, especially, and I guess the photography room. You raised my blood pressure, one, so that's great. I really love that scene. But again, these are like confined spaces. So how was it to create that, those moments down in the, I guess, the photography studio?
Yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking at first, because we we want to make sure that this confined space feels confined but doesn't get boring, like
Okay.
that's the trick is we didn't want a movie where we're like, now we're in the living room, back to the kitchen, back to the living room, back to the kitchen, and that's what we had to work with, outside of some very kind of prime little moments outside of the apartment. So we definitely paid a lot of attention to how can we shoot these spaces and manipulate these spaces, with lighting and with camera, to be able to really keep things fresh and interesting.
And to hide scares in plain sight. I mean, with the mannequins that are covered like that, any one of them can come at you at any time. And so and that was, a brilliant suggestion from Justin, which comes from a great reference that you can get into if you want to, but that just, it gave us so many possibilities. Any one of them could come at me at any time. And so I think as the audience, there is that tension watching that scene, and we had no idea that scene would be so popular. Actually, we were just like, does this work? And and I'm so glad that it did. But I love it when filmmakers hide scares in plain sight. Like Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead, with the swamp. You're just like the swamp, and then the same thing with Hereditary with Toni Collette in the corner of the ceiling. You're just like, oh my God. I remember being in the movie theater watching that, just being like, do you see it? Do you see it? So we love hiding scares in plain sight. So that was our attempt, in this small independent way of saying, how can we do that here? So I'm glad it worked on you.
I was just like, I need to get the fuck out. That as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I was like, do I press pause? I'm like, I'm gonna power through it. But I was like, if I were in a theater, it would be one of those moments where I would have like my arms like gripped, trying to rip off the handles. Like I don't do well in scenes like those. And so, that's why I love being scared. But I was just like, oh man, yeah, you put me on edge. I loved it.
It's fun. That kind of stuff has always, I love that kind of, like she said, hiding scares in plain sight. I love the type of horror that requires you to rewind and be like, did I see that? Like, I did, like, I love that. I love that kind of stuff. And it actually reminds me, it's so funny, I didn't even think of this, and this might have even been a kind of inspiration along the way, but many years ago, I went to a haunted house in Philadelphia, and it's an old prison that had been shut down, and they turn every October, they turn it into a haunted house, this big Eastern State Penitentiary.
Oh, wow.
And
so fun.
There's this one part that was my favorite part of this haunted house. It's this long corridor, and it's entirely backlit with this one shining light, and there are just people down the entire corridor. Most of them are mannequins, I'm fairly certain, but some of them aren't. and you never know which thing is going to move so slightly. And I remember just the minute I entered that corridor being like, oh shit.
Like you telling me this is raising, I'm like, I don't know what I would do in that. Like, I love haunted houses for that, but I haven't been to one where I've encountered that scenario, but I'd be stopped for a moment, that's for sure.
It's so funny. I didn't even think about it until just now, but so we love those moments of like, scanning around the room, like what is there, what's danger, and it's tough when you have a small space. Trying to find ways to hide those are tough. So we had to kind of think like, how can we hide those but put it right in front of you? Like, and that was definitely the sometimes the oldest tropes work best, something under a sheet is
I mean, I was scanning the room like you said, so I just it was really good. As soon as we first entered that room, I was like, something is unsettling to me, and then when we keep going back, I'm like, oh my gosh, please stay out of that room. So it was very effective how you both did that. one of my favorite scenes, it's actually in the very beginning, just because it looks so gorgeous, is just Charlie standing out front, and then you see Simone, and we're in the rain. And how did that shot all come together? It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That shot needed to break the romance of the very beginning, because I will say, as an actor, it was, the script did me a favor, because we start, I think, at Charlie's happiest. We start when she is just utterly overjoyed, doing this beautiful shoot on the beach and in her place with her, the woman that she loves, and then immediately break to this scene on the street that you're talking about, the loneliness. And it was raining that day. And we were like, great, this totally plays in with the kind of vibe that we're going here. And Justin colored the film as well, and we wanted to, we talked about that scene switching to a cooler tone, everything being a little desaturated, a little cooler. And we really wanted that kind of 70s vibe, that slow zoom out from Charlie, and to really separate her, frame to frame. They're rarely in the same frame after that, at least for this section. We just really wanted to remove Charlie and to make her feel so separate. And so yeah, the concept, if you want to talk about setting that up as well.
Yeah, I mean, because it everything, like, I did pause, because it's just, like you said, the color, and just it's one of my favorite shots of the film.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
I mean, it's very, very, very inspired from 70s cinema. I mean, it's the use of the zooms, the kind of just lonely frame, everything. The one thing that we paid very, very close attention to, because like we said earlier, where we didn't have money, we did have time. So the visual storytelling of the film was super important to us. Like, every frame had to help motivate that story as much as the script and the characters. So there's not, I will say, there are no unintentional shots in there. Everything had something to say. Everything has a piece of the story to tell, and I know, it's funny talking to other filmmakers, when you're in the middle of it, and you're not dealing with a pandemic, getting the time to get those shots is often not really something you're allowed. You have to kind of, they call the economy of shooting of sort of, you need to figure out the best way, but also a quick way to make sure you're not wasting money. But
sure,
we thought, when we do have time, let's do it. Let's really tell the story in every possible way we can.
And if I can jump in, quite frankly, I think if we had been on a more typical schedule, I find, at least when budgetarily I feel constricted by the schedule, dialogue scenes tend to give you the amount of information that you need for scenes.
Yeah,
sure.
Because shooting this particular scene the way that we did takes more time than coverage, right? Than like shot wide, basically doing the scene that way. So we wanted to really tell it visually with no words, and that does take longer. But I think the film is better for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I come to film. I've been a cinematographer for many years, and that's a big way I like to tell a story is visually, and I'm a very visual storyteller to begin with. So, when we were plotting out kind of how we're going to make this movie, a big part of that conversation was, why are we shooting it this way? Like, what are we trying to say? And
yeah,
so that's why I say nothing in there is unintentional. There's no parts where we just threw up a camera and did it. Everything's very very precise.
Yeah, I mean, I love the color palette of the entire film, because I really like that scene was just, again, gorgeous. And then again, within the apartment and within the confines, but then you would then intercut with the beach scenes, which are also, I also would like to know how you pulled those off, because that was also just something I was like, wow, that could be a painting. That was just stunning. Like, I don't know how you were able to get all that, like, just to be empty and that space. It was
timing is everything.
Yeah, a lot of early mornings.
Yeah, it's I've wanted to shoot that space for a very long time. I love I spend time on that beach, and I love that area, and that's one of those I've kind of packed away of like, someday I'm going to use it. And when I originally scouted to show Emily, because we had talked about using it, and I think I just got on my bike, and I at like 5 a.m. went out, because I knew that I'd catch that that overhanging kind of
Foggy
fog
sunrise.
and that happens in the morning, and it was just it just made so much sense. It's the idea of like blurring the boundaries. It's the idea of like, there's no end in sight. It's just that endless, view. And so when we saw that it worked, it's just it's all about just time, just finding that perfect timing.
Well, and luckily during the pandemic, that space is used. So the kind of doors that you see along what looks like a hotel, they're actually just little shacks that you can like place your it's basically like a closet almost. It's a beach club, and they opened at 9 a.m. still during the pandemic. Everybody had like masks on and bathing suits, which was, quite a sight to see as well. But everybody would come at 9, so we knew we had, until 9, and I think we shot there for a total of about 6 days in total, and we just got really lucky with the fog that would come in every morning. So we would get there, oh my god, we would get up at like 4 and then drive out there to be there for the fog, and thank god the whatever mist had settled there held for most of the morning, so it actually looked very consistent. You couldn't really tell where the water ended and the sky began, and that was such a beautiful, stark, tragic image for the metaphor of this film, because truly Charlie doesn't understand where she starts and where Simone starts, and the kind of blurring of the lines of reality as well. We were like, what a gift.
And it's I mean, color wise, it was important to, I mean, the beginning of the film has to be hopeful, because Charlie's hopeful, she's excited she's in love, so the color palette of the film changes dramatically, and I think you can mostly see that by way of the beach, because when we open on the beach, it's beautiful, it's colorful, it's
pink lips,
they're vibrant,
blue sky,
and we pull that color away, and we make it a little more of a dead space as she goes through the story.
I would also like to know then too, you had who I consider one of my, she's a horror icon in your film, and I just have to ask what it was like working with Barbara Crampton.
An absolute pleasure. She was, we were so humbled and flattered that she took this project on. Our casting director, David, shared the script with her and asked us, are you okay if I share the script with Barbara Crampton? And we were like, I mean, sure, go for it. Like, we expect nothing, like, please. And she got back to us on the strength of that first scene with Charlie, because she said that we didn't write that relationship with any villain, that everybody felt very grounded and very real, and that's why that scene with the mother is so heartbreaking. And so she agreed to take it on, and she was just an utter delight. We were able to rehearse with her over Zoom. We ultimately mailed her a GoPro and a microphone. She did her hair and makeup. We had to pause one day because she filmed in her home, They're
construction.
she had
outside?
construction going on one day, like some guy with a chainsaw outside, like cutting down trees in California, and we were just like, yeah, we can't use the audio from that day, so we had to reschedule the actual shoot day. But when we actually shot with her, I performed with her. That is not my coverage in the film.
Mhm.
But so we had both worked with her, and then it's an interesting experience as an actor and a director to be on Zoom with Barbara Crampton, feeding her a performance that hopefully will elicit a certain performance from her that I
Mhm.
will act to later.
It's a very confusing
Oh,
process.
wow.
Do you know what I mean? Because my entire scene, my process when we got around to doing my coverage, we had locked Barbara's coverage, and she gave us so much to work with. She worked with us all day,
Yeah.
take after take, just giving us different things, giving us different flavors, and it was such a joy. So it was this grab bag of like delightful coverage, this excellent performance just throughout, and just with nuance that we got to play with. And then we basically had to choose her performance, like what we were going to use of her in the final product.
Mhm.
I would watch it. I would basically memorize the way that she had delivered things. I would watch it, and then we would call action, and I was acting to a green screen the entire time. So it was a very confusing process.
Yeah,
My
so
brain did a lot of work
Emily,
during
due to
that,
the
but
way we had to shoot this, Emily was never able to actually act alongside her actors. She's always acting to an empty screen.
That's impressive.
So she was able to act with Barbara, and then Thea, she again, you didn't
no, I never got
that's
to
right.
act with Dora either.
I think Dora had a friend that she was having read lines off set, but
Yeah.
Emily never got to act with another actor, with the exception of a single scene. And it's talking about dialogue
Yeah.
with Emma
Yeah.
out on the street when they're yelling at one another. It's the only time I think you were ever actually
Well, and
speaking
the
with
beach
another actor.
for dialogue
Speaking,
scenes,
yeah.
for sure.
So
Yeah,
it
so it
was
was very
tricky, yeah.
confusing, but Barbara understood exactly what we were going for, and she completely was down with the independent nature of the project based on the strength of the writing, her words.
Barbara
So
is she's such a supporter of
truly.
independence and
Mhm.
kind of first time filmmakers. And I mean, even her work, like early on work with Stuart Gordon, I mean, they were coming out of just like theater. Like none of them had done things like Reanimator and From Beyond.
Mhm.
So she's just always maintained that interest in new innovative kind of minds, and she really puts her time in that. It's awesome now knowing her as a friend as well. Just the interest that she puts towards new voices is so cool and so refreshing. And she's she's very thoughtful with her roles. Like she doesn't take everything that comes her way, which was such a huge compliment. Like she's very specific with what she wants to be a part of. So,
and brilliant on the press. We, Dark Star set us up with Katrina Wan PR, and that company really helped us
Oh,
push
they're
the
really
film.
nice. Yeah.
They're so
Yeah.
wonderful. And Barbara was on all the time. She was just so generous through interview to interview, just back to back, full days, packed full of podcasts and interviews. And like, it was thrilling for us. And it was just even more inspiring to watch Barbara, on another screen on Zoom, another Zoom. But just to watch how graceful and how enthusiastic and how tireless Barbara is about championing new voice in horror.
Yeah.
And we're thrilled that was our first experience, that this is our first feature film, first of many. And we were completely spoiled by Barbara Crampton.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I can't believe I didn't this was the first feature?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first
For both of us.
our first feature. Yeah.
It didn't feel like that, so that's why I'm a little shocked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The first
I mean, that's really awesome to hear about, Barbara. And I think, honestly, it feels like independent horror is really starting to come back. I think Dark Star has, or at least I've seen a couple of their others that they've really been heavily promoting as well. And it's just kind of nice to see new voices, new talent, and new storytelling. It's just one of my favorite things because I'll love a big budget horror, but I don't mind. Like this film like hit me emotionally, and then it also had those beats of where it hit me like, oh, I'm scared shitless. But at the end of the day, afterwards, I was just sitting there processing, and then the entire time I'm like, oh my god, there's also now queer horror, which for me that's I want more of.
Yeah.
And so it was just, yeah, this was. I guess out of that, then my question would be, with independent horror on the rise, what's something you've seen recently or something over the past, 365 days that just, really resonated with you?
Oh, there's so much. I mean,
Resurrection. I mean, Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. He hasn't seen it yet,
No.
so I get to rewatch it soon, which I can't wait. That
Performance is
destroyed me. I Jesus Christ, that I mean, and I'm an actor, so I'm looking at this from performance. I am just giddy at Tim Roth and Rebecca Hall being in something together. That destroyed me in the best way. And oh my god, and Watcher, which he is also seeing. We're gonna watch that later. I've seen
she watched all the movies while I was away.
It was on a shoot, so I was just like going through.
Yeah,
those are two that I have really loved lately. What about you?
I really love. I mean, we've been we do festivals pretty often. We try to go to anything we can, and we were just up in at Fantasia in Montreal. Saw some really great films. I love the festival circuit because that's where you get to see those little bite-sized films that don't get the promotion or the push, and that's why like Dark Star, like you said, is so wonderful because they find those strange little films, and they find some really great voices. I am actually, there's a film I didn't get to see, but I've seen the work of this filmmaker online. There's a movie called Skinamarink that's making its rounds. It's making its rounds at the festivals right now, and I'm
scared to see that.
I've been a fan of what he does on his YouTube channel. He kind of does little pieces of what I feel Skinamarink will eventually be. So I'm very excited to see that. It looks like there's a strong and different voice there, which is fun.
I think, yeah, I'm hoping that finds a place soon, or we'll get screeners, because I want to see that. I actually, Resurrection I saw at a festival, same with Watcher. So, and I also really am enjoying, there's also been a lot of strong female voices coming out recently. I mean, again, your performance was, again, I would still say gut-wrenching. Rebecca Hall's was, it was like almost 2 hours of intensity that I held my breath, I felt like. And then Chloe Okuno creating Watcher, some of those shots are just cool.
I am so inspired by her. Even last night I was looking up her references because I've written many feature films just solo, and one in particular that my manager and I are pushing right now is partially inspired by Watcher and inspired by the films that inspired her. And it's along those lines of I love how simple yet profound that film is, and how it's with so many Hitchcockian images and the approach to cinema. I love her brain, and I love her short film Slut. I love everything she's done. Oh, I mean, that short film, and I mean, Hail Ratma. Like
Of course.
So good.
like thank God. So Chloe is so inspiring to me. And I can't wait to see what she does next. So I totally agree with you.
I think that's what I love about independent cinema, like small independent cinemas, especially in horror genre cinemas. When you really strip away the money and the locations and the cast and all that stuff, and you really kind of, it has to be story.
Mhm.
You get people doing really, really brilliantly interesting things with very little, because you realize how much, how little you actually do need to be able to tell an engaging story. I mean, there's stories of it. I mean, one of my favorite genre, like sci-fi films, is Cube, back in the day, which is literally the same room over and over and over again. Like,
Great
the
film.
way you're able to create worlds outside of just showing those worlds, that's so interesting. And the
Cube is
filmmakers that
so
pull that
brilliant.
kind of stuff off always blow me away. I love seeing, what people can do with very little.
Mm.
Well, I think also
Get
when
great
that
stories.
happens, you get people who actually want to be there, people who want to give it their all, and you can tell that they're putting their love of everything into this project. And so that's why I'm a big fan of that as well. I still love my big budgets every now and then, but
Absolutely.
sometimes you don't get the performances that you really are wanting, or you're not getting the story. I mean, I just watched a film called When I Consume You, and it was
Yeah.
in the similar veins.
Harry
It was,
Potter. Yeah.
I mean, it was, you had
Incredible.
Perry and then the two actors. I mean, if they weren't on screen, they were behind, assisting. So you could tell they
I
just
love that group of filmmakers. They do such interesting,
Yeah, they look like people. I was just like, oh,
so good.
so good. I found it on Netflix years
the
ago.
tension they build in that film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just with the thing over his head, and you're like, what is going on? Shout out to Perry Blackshear. Well done, sir. Please keep making films. We are massive fans of his and his entire cast and crew. And they like us, shift in front of and behind the camera. That's true indie filmmaking. And yeah, we adore them.
That's a fun thing. I think what you said in performance is like, when you're doing it for you, when you're all, and it's just the passion and creativity, you're willing to take those big swings, those big moments, because it's now or never. You're unafraid, because it's like, but I feel like when it gets bigger and there's more hands in the kitchen, and there's more money, like there's more say around, like, well, we don't want to be too weird, because then we're going to get away from this audience, and we need to be as general as possible. And I think, there's a place for all those films. Obviously, big budget kind of theatrical feature horror is fun, because it's fun for all of us. But the nice thing about independence is they can kind of zero in on a certain type of audience. I mean, I know Alone with You is not a movie that like everyone's gonna love. It's like, if you're a huge fan of just splatterfests nonstop and you want to watch gore, our movie is not that. But it's for a very specific audience, and we hope that audience really understands and really loves it. And so far we've been very happy to see they have, but that's what you get with independence. You get those more intimate films, things that feel like they're talking to you, because they are. They're meant to be for that kind of independent, the film lover of sorts.
And I will say, as oh, sorry, just to say,
go ahead.
I will say, as American filmmakers, we independent American filmmakers struggle with something that I don't think a lot of people fully understand it in other countries, with funding for film, what a novel concept, what a wonderful idea. Because in Canada, I mean, they are able to get grants, and not everyone, but I have tons of friends in Europe and the UK and Australia who get, you know, government funded, like, funds from the government to,
wow.
it's a long grant process. And I'm not saying that everyone has this luxury. It is a long grant process from what I understand. But there's not really that kind of structure for American independent filmmakers, unless you get into Sundance labs or any number of, you know, another intense grant process. But for the most part, we are fundraising, and we are, but independent filmmakers in America, like, we, you know, without studio backing, we're on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, we are scraping, we are talking to our dentists, being like, stand, you have some money, maybe you can, you know, it's true. So if you're going to make a movie, you want to make that movie. And so I do love the passion and the kind of cream that rises to the top of the independent filmmakers here, because you, in America, you have to really want it.
It's not
so
easy.
I just really appreciate that, about that kind of quirk about American independent filmmakers.
Yeah, you all are hustling, like, there's no joke, because and on top of that, you have your shooting windows, probably even, you know, how long did it take you to shoot this, now that I'm thinking about that?
Ours is a little different, like we said, because we knew we had the time.
Okay, that's right.
And we weren't paying crew.
Yeah, we weren't paying crew.
Okay.
For a larger film, we look forward to having crew. God bless crew. Like, I can't wait for Justin to have an AC, for me to not gaff and grip, and, you know, we look forward to that. But because we only had each other, we didn't have to pay ourselves, really. So it took about 2 months.
Okay.
Now the bulk of it happened within a few weeks, when we were working with the other actors, when we were getting the bit, you know,
those were very structured times.
But but we took our time to be able to refine those finer moments, those shots, and so, like I said, what crew does is it saves you time, right? So instead of having to, as a person holding a camera, I can go, hey, move that light over there, instead of putting down the camera, going over, adjusting the light, getting back, resetting my shot, you know. So what we didn't have crew. So we had to take the time. We had to have the time. And we knew we had that thanks to a pandemic, you know, but it you know, otherwise, I don't know that our process would be similar. It would just be more people doing it. You know, it's and it was important to us, like, it was important to us to make a film that looked like it had a crew, like it looked like this was a team making it. We didn't want to make, you know, God, no, you know, hate towards found footage, because we both absolutely love the genre,
found footage.
But that's not what we wanted to make. We wanted to make something that felt cinematic, that felt put together and crafted. And again, what we didn't have in crew, we had in time. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, Justin worked absolute magic just with some of the focus pulling that he did, moving shots, shots that look very simple, of Charlie, like, coming out to the kitchen, then going to the record player, and then back into the kitchen. I can't tell you how many times we did that, because I had to be sharp the whole time. We did that for a full day. Honestly, that shot alone, it is mind-boggling what one extra crew member can give to, and we lost our minds a few times. We were just like, why are we even doing this? This is insane. But I will say, we did have crew, and I have to give a shout out to all of our post crew, because they truly made this a film. We got a ton of on-set, on location audio that was usable, but Justin started cutting the film. We needed to separate him so that we could be co-directors in post. Ward Crockett edited the rest of the film beautifully, picked up what Justin had laid down and ran with it. Sean Duffy was our sound designer. He is incredible, and he constructed the the audio, the world of this film in such a cinematic way that it feels bigger because of him, truly. And the score by Phil Mossman, who just, thank you so much, Phil, for everything. Honestly, with their powers combined, this became a film, truly.
That's wow. It's so amazing. Well, one, I love hearing you two as filmmakers, directors, writers, just thanking everybody else who was a part of it. But it really does sound like there was just so much passion and love. Like you gave it 110%, and that's what I enjoy seeing, because then again, what you guys put into it is what I was getting out of it, honestly.
That's everything we could ask for. Thank
I
you.
mean, it's funny because I hear that every time I go to a drag show. Like you're never as good as your audience is, you know. But I was so engaged. I felt with Charlie. It was just, and then again, some of the shots, the scares, and you should know though, I am a gore hound, and I didn't think, I knew going into this I wasn't going to get that. But what instead I got, like, almost to the point of where I needed to go sit by myself because you just took me to therapy, is what you did. So again, kudos to you and to like everyone else who helped in post, because it truly is. I'm just, you know, to the people watching, people listening, it is a wonderful film. But make sure you're in the good mind space, because it's gonna take you some places. But I do think by the end of it, I was still like, it was an experience. So I just, again, as an audience member and a fan of horror and film, I just, again, yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you
so much.
I can tell you it was unbelievably difficult to do. I don't even think we had any idea going into it. Like,
no, if we knew how hard this was going to be, we may have never made it.
Yeah,
truly, I'm so glad we did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there's blood, sweat, and a shitload of tears in that movie.
On screen and off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, just on a personal level, thank you so much. And I had literally we're partners in real life, so I had literally just moved in with Justin a month before the pandemic started. And we we lived in that apartment. We had neighbors upstairs. The apartment building really kind of fell apart while we were living there and filming there. I don't want to do any spoilers, but there is a shot, you know, in the end when Charlie does get to leave. And that was our final moment in that apartment. We shot that shot. I took the key, I laid it on the counter, and we were out of there.
Oh, wow.
This was truly not only professionally huge for us to finally make, you know, our debut feature, and we have solo work, and we will continue directing together and separately. But this was so monumental, not only to be our debut feature film, but a true test of our relationship in pretty much the biggest pressure cooker possible. And I remember when Dark Star signed on, they came to Fantastic Fest to treat us to tacos and, you know, do the Austin experience. And they were just like, and you guys are still together?
Yeah, I'm
Jesus Christ. We're like, yeah, we're actually getting married in October. So
oh wow.
Yeah, so
it
worked out. So we get to be alone together now.
I love that. Well, I just have to ask then, if you're able to, what's next for you both?
Oh, who knows? There's so many things.
I mean, we have a couple of projects that we're working on together, a couple of feature films. I have many feature films that I've written solo that I'm pushing with my manager. I'm working on a film right now with Daryl Freimark, who just premiered House of Darkness at Fantasia. He's at Fright Fest right now. I was hired on a project that he had. I rewrote and will direct a feature with him as producer. So we're really looking forward to that. Justin will shoot that. So, you know, we're a package deal kind of wherever we're going. And yeah, and then I have a couple of smaller horrors, thrillers that I'm pushing with my manager, but we're constantly working on our projects together.
Yeah, and we still have the film that we were going to do right before the pandemic happened. That's still
Yeah.
in the works, and that
Oh,
will
good.
we'll get that. I don't know when, but that'll be somewhere down the road. We're also
Same
working on
producers too.
same producers, and we're currently working on another film pretty actively. And then, like I said, we both have our separate stuff, and I'm we each have separate work that we'll always both be working on. But yeah, it's there's always something going on.
Yeah.
We are always trying to stay busy, which is, I mean, why a quarantine was not going to go by without us making something. So
No. Oh, and I do have to shout out one other project that we're working on so many things at once that I was hired to write a horror film in conjunction with the director Ray Red, who's a wonderful Filipino filmmaker. She wrote Birdshot, Eerie. She wrote The Girl with the Gun. She's part of an incredible lineage of Filipino filmmakers. She's wonderful. So I've been working with her and her team for the past year. I was hired on to write her next screenplay, so that is going incredibly well, and it will be translated into Tagalog, so I'm writing it in English, and so
that's so awesome.
it's I'm really excited. I am so honored to work with such an incredible team, and hopefully if it does well, then we can talk about an American remake at some point.
That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
I just to both of you, thank you so much for sitting down, talking about your film, letting me geek out for a little bit, because again, I love horror. And for everyone, I mean, Alone with You, it's out from VOD. You could buy it. It's also on Shudder. Just if you haven't seen it, go see it. And again, Emily and Justin, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Everything. Yeah, thank you for enjoying the film.
And with that, then I'll just say goodbye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.